Hello again there. So, come around to first point on the outside is your water connection, which this is yours. So when we finish, I'll put it inside your sink or whatever else. So all it is, push in and out connection. On the bottom of that is a submersible pump that will obviously take the water into the caravan. Just as and when you're ready, easy said and done, there we go, into the barrel, and then push them in like so. And then what you're going to do is you'll see that there'll be a little lip that will sit inside of that top part there. When you've got it in, push the lid down like so, and that stops that connection from pushing himself back out when you run your taps and whatever else. All right, get that out of the way so you can still see the rest. Then you've got this here is where your caravan runs off gas and electric. All your fumes will be coming out of this one here. Now, as far as you're concerned, there's no covers or anything you actually have to do to it. The only thing I ever say, just don't obstruct it. All right, so leave that alone basically. Then in there, gas locker. So at the top here is your regulator. Now, I don't know what gas you're going to run. I'm going to presume propane. That's just an educated guess I'm going to make. So what I'll do is I'll put a pigtail in here before you go. So that way you can just connect up to whatever bottle. Because I know your part exchange is here, but obviously there isn't anything on there. So generally what I'll do is I'll just basically put a propane pigtail in there. I won't fit it to the regulator. I'll just leave it in the locker so that when you get your gas bottle or whatever, obviously you can just let me know. All right. Obviously in there as well is your leg winder. All right, nice and easy. Then you've obviously got 2 points for your drainage. All right, so one close to the tyre is for your kitchen, one close to the back is for your bathroom. There's not many things we provide for free, but 2 bits of piping we do, and then it's obviously just depends on what sort of site you're on at that point, whether you need a waste master there to gather all the water, or if you're on a fully serviced pitch, then they tend to give you a designated drain point somewhere at the back of the caravan that will obviously replace said waste master at that point. But obviously it will just be dependent on what you're using at whatever time. Then obviously you've got the glamorous section. So you flush, obviously fill it to the U-bend at the back just there. It will hold in there, give or take about 8 litres, all right? As soon as you start seeing the water right at the back, take your pink chemical or your green chemical, depending on what you use. And I tend to treat the pink like squash, because it's simply fragrance and nothing else. And obviously if you start putting too much pink, it's not impossible to stain the toilet pink, which may not be particularly appealing at that point, all right? So just a dash of pink does you generally fairly good, all right? You don't really need too much of it, because like I said, it is solely for fragrance, and that is its only job. Then you've got the cassette for your toilet, which if you lift that orange handle there and slide the box out, it comes out in and out nice and easy. It is also on wheels, makes your life hell of a lot easier, because I'll tell you what, when they are full, they are heavy, so you can wheel them around like that. Then you've got in here easier two-handed, but there we go. In here, a measuring cap, and that will just sort of gauge blue chemical to pop in. Now I generally say a cap full of blue does you plenty good enough. The only thing I would ever say is if you've just put the cassette or the blue chemical in the cassette and it's completely bone dry, what I tend to recommend people to do is put a bit of water with it, because it sort of helps the reaction get going. After that, use it as normal, you can carry on. Then obviously when you come to empty said cassette, take the cap off. Don't tip him up obviously like so, but press that button at the end and that releases all the air in the chamber and sends the waste out of here. Then if you wanted to, so put that back down, if you wanted to, over a candlelit dinner, you can have a little look. I didn't think you'd pounce at the opportunity. And then obviously, the only thing I ever say about the cassette after that is if when you've got it in, so he's all the way in like that, if you ever try to remove it, it doesn't come out as easy as that. That will just be because, like I was saying in the internal video, that will be because your toilet flap is open, all right? Obviously, like I said, you will definitely know the difference between it is stuck and it's able to come out, don't worry. Just don't, if it feels tough to get out, I would go inside and check the toilet first before yanking it, all right? Then you've got just up at the top there is what they call a drainage tail. So essentially what this will do is gets rid of all the flash water to save you standing at your toilet, keep pressed till it's all gone. So that just basically gets rid of all of that, generally quick and easy. But all you need to do is take that rubber bung off and gravity will do the rest. Now it might be worth getting a bottle or a bucket just because they don't design it quite long enough to reach outside, and technically what you didn't use you could always stick into a bottle or and then chuck it into a locker and save yourself some money when you next go out, all right? Obviously number plate we can sort out as and when. Then you've got obviously a little cutout at the back here, same on both sides, and this is obviously to get your back legs down, all right? So for obviously at the moment I've got them both up, but as and when you caravan, you'll obviously go via that bolt there. You've got the manual winder in your gas locker, which you simply pop onto the bolt there, wind it one way will go down, and vice versa that goes up. Obviously you can buy a drill bit like that and do it the laser way if you so wish to do so, but obviously you will have the manual winder with the caravan, all right? Then here is simply underbed access, all right? So if you're wondering why that's all open, basically I've put a temporary battery on there just because I'll show you the motor mover working, so obviously you know it does work, but obviously at the moment I can't put your battery on here because it's not on your part exchange. So I've just put a temporary one on there just for the time being, but obviously before you go tomorrow, or before you whatever, before I finish here, I'll take that battery off, all right? Obviously the lid for it's just there if you're wondering. Obviously after that it's a nice bit of storage. You do have isolation switch to the motor mover up here. So what you'll have is, take that out, because that key there is obviously yours. So this will come with the caravan, but obviously you've got that point there, which is the isolation switch. So if you're wanting the motor mover, or to use the motor mover, take that red key, goes into the point one and only way, push him in and turn him on. All right, good way to know he's on. You can't take the key back out once he is on, all right? But obviously I'll turn it off for the time being and I'll use the motor mover right at the end. Then down here, first point is your mains hookup point, all right? As you can know, generally you will have a nice new Maisley with the caravan, but pretty much plug in and away you can go, nice and easy with those. This one is an external plug socket, as well as the external satellite connection in the bottom there. So if you want to have a dish or whatever, you can do so. And then obviously, other than that, connect whatever you freely wish to do so. Then you've got the fridge vents, which if you've got an awning up, most of the time, you're fine. Leave them alone. But obviously, if you don't and the weather took a turn for the worst and got really cold, it might be worth creating a makeshift windbreak of some sorts just to avoid as much airflow going in. Basically what you'll notice is if the fridge isn't getting to its correct temperature inside. So it's not when you're storing the caravan, it's only when you're using the caravan you need to worry about these. Obviously if you notice that you're caravanning out of season a bit more frequently, or let's say colder weather more frequently, you could buy winter covers for them and they clip onto the front to stop as much airflow going in. But if you're doing general seasonal camping and got an awning up most of the time, you should be absolutely fine to leave them alone. Then underneath here, another bit of storage locker, all right? That wheel brace if you ever need it. You'll have two of those because obviously you've got one for your motor mover as well. And then obviously in here is a side lift jack, all right? Obviously, hope you never have to use that, but if you do, there it obviously lives. Here is external barbecue point. There, that cap comes off. Then obviously inside you have a little brass piece that you push into there and obviously connect it up to whatever barbecue you're using at whatever time, all right? And then obviously down here you've got the cutout for your front legs, exactly the same principle as your back legs, and generally nice and easy with those. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pause the video, I'll replay it in a second when I've sorted out, got all the motor mover bits and bobs up together, all right? So when you come to use the motor mover, you'll need three things. You'll need that remote, that red key, and that little bar just there, all right? So first and foremost, take your red key, go to that point underneath the bed, push that in, and then obviously turn him on. Like I said, a good way to know he's on, you can't take the key back out once he is on, but obviously generally once you want to use the motor mover, make sure that is on. Then you basically would ignore the remote for a second, come back to that in a second. What you'd basically do is take that bar and go to this bolt, all right? Now you want to try and get yourself as much leverage towards the floor as you can. Let's shorten that out to make life a bit easier. Like that. That probably do us. Extend him and then nice old push on him until that clunk, all right? Now what you've also got is a little window in there that obviously when it's off the wheels, it will be yellow in the red, and then when you pull him over, it goes yellow into the green there. Now, just want to double check, you do. So that has a roll through bar, and that will engage both at the same time, and that doesn't matter what side's easiest for you at whatever time, all right? Then take your remote. Now the remote, I do it under the bed because I can't do it one-handed, but basically to turn it on you want to press these two green buttons at the same time. So press those two, that turns the remote on. Now with the remote, you've got this then window at the top, which one tells you it's on, as well as it's also a speed chart. So you've got 2 arrows over here, would be faster mode. And then if you wanted to slow it down, press that a couple of times and it goes across that way, that being obviously the slowest. You've got say 2 or 3 speed modes, that being your quickest. Now anytime you use the motor mover, that is the front of the caravan. So that would be forward, that would be backwards. I would simply then go around here, turn or take handbrake off, and then you could simply drive the caravan. As easy as that. All right. And obviously you get worried that you have to let it go and it's another button to stop. There isn't. As soon as you let go, that will stop almost instantaneously. You've obviously got backwards, forwards, generic sort of controls, but what you've also have is the option 2, where you've got a single axle caravan, you could use forward and a directional arrow at the same time. It's quite hard, I can't do it and video it, but you could use that and it would go up and around at the same time, if that makes sense. All right, so if you ever wanting to be sort of accurate with it or move it as well as you're going up and around, you can obviously do so. All right, so your range is limited us on there, so all of these buttons here are activated to you. This middle one, don't worry about. Basically, they do the automatic version of the motor mover, and instead of making a new remote for the manual or for the auto, they just don't want to make a new remote. So that button there to you is obsolete. Don't worry about it. Everything else on here is what you'll need to use. All right. The other thing I usually make people aware of is that, let's say, because obviously after a period of inactivity, the remote would turn itself off. All right. Then you've also got this key. That obviously when you want to use the motor mover, you turn that key on, but obviously you don't want to leave the key on all of the time and just drain your battery. So obviously as and when you're using it, you turn that on and you turn it off as and when you're not using it. But let's say you was using the motor mover, you was driving about doing whatever you're doing, and somebody's called you away, you've gone away and done something else for 10 or so minutes. After a period of inactivity, that key doesn't physically turn off, but the power to it would. So that box down there is all the brains for the motor mover, and basically what that would do is stop working. So if you're ever using the motor mover and it stops working, or you've gone away and you've done something else and then come back and try to use it and it's not working, I always go to that red key, turn it off, turn it back on, because that's usually the reason why. All right, but then obviously when you're finished, that can be turned off. A lot of people will leave it in there, so I suppose there's not many times you need the key without the caravan. The remote, after a period of inactivity, like I said, will turn itself off, but the same way to turn it on is to turn it off. And then obviously you don't forget to disengage the motor mover. All you're going to do now is do the opposite. So you're going to go from back to front. All right, that gets extended, and all I say, hold the handle tight like that. All right, and that's him off the wheels. As easy as that. Obviously if you're not using it to hitch on, make sure to put handbrake up, as easy as that. And then obviously another pro tip for you, because obviously you've got millions of other stuff to remember, if you feel like you might be quite prone to forgetting you've engaged the motor mover onto the wheels, take this bar and chuck it on your driver's seat once you've put it on the wheels, and it usually is a reminder for yourself to say, I've forgotten to do something here. All right, obviously that is your motor mover bits and bobs. Let me pause it for a second. I'm just going to quickly go around to the front so I can explain the hitching on side of things as well. All right, right. So obviously when you come to hitch on, essentially what you want to look at is, obviously first and foremost, get your car in line. Use your motor mover or just drive up to it, whatever's easiest for you. And I tend to say get those black dots there in line with the neck of the tow bar, and that usually be where you want to be. Now when you come to obviously hitch on, sometimes that handle might be stuck down like that. Just grab it, lift it up, it clicks into place, he says. And then obviously what you can do, because basically sometimes it's he says, so I know what it's done. There's a little bit in there. So obviously what you want to do, wind it down onto the car, and essentially what you'll find is that when it goes onto the ball, this handle will stay in that position there. When you want to keep, well, when you do so, you want to keep winding, and then this handle will automatically click down on its own. All right. Now in there it shows a green window, or a red window at the minute, just because obviously we're not on anything. But as and when you do go onto something, there is a green tab. I don't know if you can see it, but it's just inside of there. all right? And basically, as and when you sit on the ball correctly, that will come a bit more proud. Obviously, at the moment, even when you're on the ball, it doesn't like go fully green or anything like that, so don't worry if it doesn't. But obviously, as long as it shows a bit of green, it's usually good. That handle clicking down usually means you've clicked onto the ball, so generally you can do as you please with it. But what I always recommend people to do is that once you've wound him down and then it's clicked down, I would always double check by winding it back up as if you was going to take it off the car, because if it's not on, it will basically jump off. But if it's on correctly, all this will do is lift up your back of your car and you'll see it as you're winding it up. Obviously, once you've done that and you know it's on the car, you can then obviously wind your jockey wheel into its little cutout so that's not flapping around or whatever. Once you know all the weights on the car and you can do all that and you've wound it up and it's up into its grooves, this handle can be undone. The wheel would then tuck along the outside here and then obviously tighten that back up onto there. Then obviously you would attach electrics, generally nice and easy with those. And then you've obviously got your handbrake, which as and when you're ready, push that down. You've also got your breakaway cable. Obviously this acts as if worst case scenario you came unhitched whilst towing. The idea is to pull the handbrake on the caravan and stop it carrying on its journey without you, all right? Now, obviously some people go around the tow bar, some people got a ring on their car. There's no mega right or wrong way to do it, as long as this is not rubbing on the ground when you're finished. And then obviously all I'd say after that is when you come to push this handle down, obviously it won't be that easy. When you're actually on the car, that should never be that easy. And if it is, I would double check what you're doing, just because it probably indicates to me you're not on correctly. Just because, I don't know if you can see it, but as I open that up, that expands out. And when I push it down, it closes in. Inside of that hitch head, up underneath there, you've got friction pads that are doing that. So basically, when you push this down, they clamp the ball, or your car tow ball, all right? So obviously, when you come to push this down, it should, in theory, have a bit of resistance to him, all right? Obviously, if it doesn't, double check it, and then obviously come to try it again, and it should be then a bit more resistant to it. And then you've also got this here, so that when it's on incorrectly, that will stay down like that, all right? So it's flat, it's red, not good. When it's on correctly, what you'll find is that will pop up like that, and there's a green ring on there, which is then like a double confirmation to you to say you are on correctly, all right? That is a good indication. As long as you've done your wind up, double checked, whatever, you should generally then be absolutely fine. Then you've also got ATC, which ATC stands for automatic trailer control. If it feels like you're going too fast, swervy S-bends, dips in the road, that kind of thing, it will pull on the car a little bit. It's just sort of an indication to you to slow up a touch, all right? Now, what you will notice is when you plug your car in, or the plug into your car, you'll hear a little motor kick in, all right? Now, in that window just there, a light should begin to flash green. It might even go solid green, which generally, as long as it's flashing green or solid green, that's fine. But basically what the flashing green is a standby mode to tell you that where we're not going anywhere, I don't need to do anything. It will only activate as and when you start towing. But I know that a lot of people like to know that it's on and working before they sort of set off. So what you can do is either drive forward 5-6 yards and brake fairly sharpishly, or even sometimes when you clunk your motor mover off and on and off, it will do it. But generally all it does is it tricks the camera into thinking it's moved, and that light will go solid green. That is what it does as and when you're towing. Now, on the basis that it's flashing green is absolutely fine. Solid green is absolutely fine. The only time I would ever say worry about that is if that light went red, which out of the many people I've ever spoke to, it is fairly rare occurrence, and it technically doesn't mean you can't tow the caravan. There's just a problem with that somewhere along the lines, because it could be flashing red light means one thing, solid red light means another. There's different codes to it that mean different things, all right? But generally, that is the inside and outside caravan tour. I hope you've got some useful information out of it. Obviously, if you have any further questions, don't hesitate to give us a call, but I will get these sent across to you, and best luck caravanning.